Welcome to ScaleArc. In this video, we walk through how to configure and use your ScaleArc software. We will first set up ScaleArc through the AWS Marketplace. If you would like a different installation mechanism, please contact support to help you get started. To install, browse to the AWS Marketplace and search for ScaleArc. You will find the product listing with some overview information and a pricing calculator. You'll be able to choose the instance type that you want your servers to run on, and you can use the cost calculator to estimate your cost. There's also additional usage information and our support contact. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. Click Continue to subscribe, and you'll be shown the terms and conditions for this marketplace offer. When you're ready, click Continue to Configuration at the top. The default option here for delivery method is what you want, as well as the software version. The default will be the latest. The one choice you do want to make here is the AWS region in which you want ScaleArc deployed. The software pricing information is also shown on this page. Click Continue to launch when you're ready, and you can review the configuration parameters that you've chosen. Once those look good, scroll down. The Launch CloudFormation is the option we want, so click the Launch button. A CloudFormation stack is what will be used to create and install your ScaleArc resources. The default choices here are all good, as we've already pre-configured the template for you, so you can simply click Next. On the stack details page is where you will enter information specific to your installation. Choose a stack name so you can remember this CloudFormation, and then enter the VPC in which you want to be installed in. The VPC CIDR is used in the security group so that the load balancers can connect to your instances. You'll probably want to supply the same CIDR as your VPC as shown in the example here. The management CIDR is used for the security group that restricts access to the web console. If you don't know in advance where that will come from, you can put the quad 0 as shown here. And then you're going to choose 2 subnets, so 2 availability zones in which we're going to install this highly available configuration. For SSH access to your instances, choose the key pair that you would like to use. And then the ScaleArc credentials are what you use to log into the web console. This first username and password is for the regular management console. And then the fencing server is used internally to coordinate between the 2 nodes. That also, you will supply a username and password. Once you've done that and taken note, you can click the Next button. Supply any additional information for your resources here. You can put tags that you want to be associated with all of the resources that are created. You can also specify an IAM role for permissions. There are other advanced options which you can also take a look at as well. When you're ready, go ahead and click Next, and you will review all of your installation parameters. Once those look good, go ahead and click the Create Stack button. You'll be taken to the Events tab of this CloudFormation stack, where you'll see an update on different events as the template creation progresses. As you refresh, you'll see a number of events on this page. If you go to the Stack Info tab, once the status says Create Completed, then you will know all of your resources are set to go. From that point, browse to the Output tab. So this is information that you want to take note of. The first 2 output values are the connection strings you will use for MySQL and MS SQL Server. The next value is the URL for the management console. We also show the username, but we do not show the password for security reasons. I've linked to the management console. There is no SSL certificate by default. Go ahead and accept that warning, and then use the first set of credentials, the username and password that you supplied as stack parameters to log in, and now you're into the ScaleArc web console. Before we configure a cluster though, let's step back and take a look at ScaleArc's capabilities. ScaleArc is database load balancing software. It drops transparently between your application and the database. It uses deep integration with the database platform to allow the rerouting of traffic during outages, queued writes and transactions during failovers. All of this happens transparent to your application and your users. All you will need to do is change the hostname in your database connection string. With your application connected to a ScaleArc cluster, it can intelligently route traffic across the different nodes. Write transactions, SQL insert, update, and delete statements, get sent to your primary database node. Whereas queries, SQL select statements, will be distributed across your read replica. All of this happens transparently with 0 changes required to your application code. ScaleArc works with both database clusters and individual databases. In this video, we will configure a ScaleArc cluster that uses an Aurora MySQL cluster. You can see here it's a 2-node cluster, and the primary and read-only endpoints are shown. We will use this information to define our ScaleArc cluster. Note that the following platforms are supported for MySQL and MS SQL Server. Postgres support will be added in a future release. You'll want to set up a few parameters so that ScaleArc can help manage the connections for your database. Here for RDS, I've created Darren's parameter group so that I can change the max connect errors and max connections. If you forgot to do this, when you set up your ScaleArc cluster and register your servers, it will remind you of this. Setting up a different parameter group is the easiest way to accomplish this on RDS. The basic architecture is shown here. This is what the AWS Marketplace installation will set up. If you're running from a separate installation, you'll want to do something similar to get a highly available solution. There's a ScaleArc primary and secondary node, each in their own availability zone, and those are fronted by an ELB. So the ELB endpoint is what you will use to browse to manage your ScaleArc cluster and also for your connection string. In this diagram here, we've shown a single primary database node and just one read replica. Your configuration may of course vary, but the basic concepts from this diagram will still apply. You will also want to make sure your database client matches the version with your database server. In my case, I'm using MySQL 5.7. So on the machine where I'm connecting from for this demo video, I'm also using the 5.7 client. To get started, browse to the endpoint for your ScaleArc installation. Log in using the credentials that you've been provided. You're greeted with a screen that's prompting you to set up a ScaleArc cluster because you don't have one defined yet. Clicking on that takes you to the definition screen. You can give a descriptive name for your cluster. For here, I will use demo cluster. You can then specify which IP addresses for the host to use. We will bind all IP addresses, 3306 as the default port, and use all outbound addresses as well. Specify your database credentials so ScaleArc can log in to your database. And then you can choose server or cluster. We're going to register a cluster. You'll click the Configure Server button and enter in your AWS credentials. This allows ScaleArc to go grab that information, provide the cluster name, the RDS cluster name, and it will pull in that information, populate the servers. You'll see that listed here, and then you can go ahead and click the Add button if all of that looks correct. For our demo today, we will skip setting up SSL. So at this point, we're all ready. We can go ahead and click the Setup Cluster button. So now that has been created, we can see the basic status, and that toggles to green. Everything is healthy now and ready to go. Next, go under Live Monitor and look at the cluster stats for the cluster that you've just created. You can see some helpful graphs here that show the number of connections, how much the cache is being used, how many queries are going on. What I recommend doing is changing the units to the smaller units. As you get started, it'll be easier to see when activity is taking place. In order to get some information to register there, I have a script here that will connect using the ScaleArc URL. I'll run that, provide your password. And in this database, I have a table with data from the closing prices of the NASDAQ stock market. There's around 12,000 rows that are in this table, so it's a decent amount of data. We'll go ahead and select from this table. We can now go back and look, and we see that our queries were registered on the graph there. You can also see the response time and some other helpful information. Now you can create your first cluster, connect to your database, and monitor the traffic going through. ScaleArc also enables you to do maintenance on one database node while it reroutes traffic to other nodes. For more information, please visit our documentation page or our YouTube channel. Reach out to us at support with any questions, and thank you for choosing ScaleArc.